All right, nice job with finishing up the presentations. That's what we just did this morning. Now we're going to introduce assignment 7, our next project. But remember that we just finished assignment 6, and assignment 6 was a type design and poster layout project with our spot illustration, kind of combining raster skills in coloring with vector skills in type design and digital line art or digital inking. Digital painting is pretty straightforward, but if we look at it, it's going to be Unit 14. It's what's next. It's our digital painting unit. And the difference is that basically you can control any pixel any way you want, and it goes on top of any kind of sketched line. Or sometimes you don't use a sketched line at all. So the way it's different from digital coloring is digital coloring always goes behind a real or implied outline. And digital painting doesn't. Digital painting just builds pixels in layers really however you want. And I'll show it in a few different ways. The only deliverable for Unit 14, well, there's 2 of them. There's a question of the day, which is pretty pertinent right now. And it has to do with generative AI and how that affects how people view digital media in general, right? How does that how does it affect digital imagery's perception of value and validity? Exactly. So you get to kind of put your own spin on that, right? Because what you see mostly through generative AI of digital imaging content, other than photographic reference, right, is digital painted reference. And there's, of course, problems with it just being a sampling of online sources, even if it's all the internet. There are biases to the internet. So just one little example I did, and this was just with the basic Portrait AI app, which has a very limited training set of data. It's from 1,000 portraits from world museums from the 19th century. And I put my photo in, right? And it makes kind of there's my photo. And then it makes, a 19th century portrait version. And then I run that portrait version through it, and it makes another portrait version. And it took 3 steps to turn me into a white woman, right? And then I took some of my artworks of different heroes of mine. I have Louis Armstrong. I have Mark Twain. I have Maya Angelou. I have different genders, different skin tones. It took 4 steps to turn them all into white women, right? So the idea of this kind of bias in the data. Now that's because there's more 19th century portraits in museum collections of women than there are of men. And thus, it's always going to push towards, it's called a regression towards the mean. So that is a problem with generative imagery. And if you haven't really thought about it or understand how it works, it's changing all the time. But I have some good info there for you to think about it. And then there are ways it's getting integrated into our software all the time. So for instance, this was a little photo composite I did, I think last semester, like in the spring, for assignment 1, right? The fantasy landscape. And then Photoshop has some pretty good generative expansion tools where you can just extend the border. And it takes some editing and curating, and you get different options, and now you have to spend credits for it. But I can make that into a bigger scene, right? Just expanding it. There's a great little video here from last week tonight defining what AI slop is, which is why there's more AI content on the internet now than human-made content, both video and imagery, and kind of the problems with that. And then here is an extremely cool AI fine artwork that's in the lobby of the Museum of Modern Art, one of my favorite museums in the world in New York. And yeah, so it's going 24/7. You're never seeing the same image twice. It's an animation. It keeps scrolling through. What's funny is it's a visual artwork. It's a whole team of computer scientists that developed it, and it's based on the data of the museum in real time with like the sensors in the museum, the security system, the population, the door counts, the ambient temperatures, all of that. But whenever it uses that data to create the imagery, which looks like this, people don't like it as much as when it's set in what it's called its default mode, which is just this, which is just like a lava lamp, which is very, very pretty, very cool, but it actually is just what the designers came up with as the parameters for visual art, right? Rather than it actually being based on data sampling. So it is AI, but it's not AI in a very expansive way. It's an AI in an extremely limited way. But it has been a big attraction for over a year now in the Museum of Modern Art. So that's an interesting article to read about if you're wondering if AI artwork will ever make it into museums. Right? It already has. Big museums. All right. So that is the question of the day. You'll have lots of opinions about it. Remember, you just need to write more than 100 words. And please don't use AI, generative AI, to create your 100 words. So this is all about just thinking what your thoughts are, just putting them down kind of as notes, getting you to think about this. And I do have a slideshow that I created just for this semester, especially for those of you in social media and digital marketing, because this is where generative AI is really replacing the most jobs in marketing. Yeah, just kind of the image making for basic marketing. Yes, for sure. Well, because we are a very consumer-based economy, right? How do you get people to consume? You advertise to them. Why is AI slop now more online than human-made images? Because of all that product advertising, because of all that, those pop-up ads and those Instagram, like, unwanted things, and those banner ads and those YouTube bumpers, all of that, right? More and more of that is becoming AI generated because it saves a lot of money. So this is just my little pitch on AI generative marketing, right? And I like my slides. So some people love it, and some people definitely hate it, right? I would say in my experience, but I talk to a lot of designers, a lot of illustrators, a lot of people who work in creative fields, not because they just want a paycheck, but because they like being in creative fields and are used to getting paid a little less because it's a job they enjoy. But now those jobs, you can pay even less to have a non-human create things for clients. And clients don't mind it. They love it because clients then get to control what the artwork is and don't have that human element of misinterpretation. So there's a lot going on. And especially for my field of illustration, it's been a big disruptor for sure. More so than photography was in the 1950s when it took over hand-done illustration for marketing. And it makes me think of this quote.
Well, what if there is no tomorrow? There wasn't one today.
That's okay. So it can get you to feel very doom and gloom about the future of human created work. But it's also kind of a big hype machine that unfortunately is causing a lot of people jobs and causing marketing budgets to be really slashed. So it has real world implications, but it is a hype machine that hasn't paid off yet. And so we're going to get into that a little bit. So there are pros and cons of using generative imaging in marketing. The goal of this is something we talked about very early in the class. You need to know about this stuff, even if you're absolutely philosophically opposed to it, because you will be better at being creative if you know how the digital tools work and where they can be useful to your workflow, even in your final project, right? So there are pros and cons for sure. And there are lots of examples, but this was something that was pretty bold. It was not even a year ago in Times Square. There was a marketing blitz, which is what it's called when there are posters, when there are digital signs, when there are buses, when there are subway ads, like the whole city is covered. And it was covered by this company, Artisan CO, which is a new company trying to get early in the market on what are called AI agents, which are basically digital employees, right? And it was the Stop Hiring Humans campaign. And it got the reactions you would expect from people that have jobs and want to keep jobs. But it did really work. And so now you have more than 70% of the top S&P companies using AI agents to replace entry-level workforces in some level, right? Because what are the positives? especially for marketing. Speed and efficiency. AI rapidly produces visuals, accelerating campaign launches, right? You can put out a lot of imagery very quickly. Customization, you can make it more unique. You can say, give everyone a tattoo under their left eye. I don't know. You can have professional quality. This is not my list. This is a more kind of industry standard list. They keep touting professional looking visuals. And sure, professional looking is anything you pay for, right? But there's an uncanny valley aspect that really turns off some people, and then some people really love it. It definitely reduces costs because it reduces the need for large design teams or stock imagery. And this one I really question, but enhanced creativity frees up human marketers to focus on high-level strategy and creative ideation rather than repetitive tasks. And when I hear that, I think of the art directors I've worked for, and there are ones that come from a marketing and a business background, and then there are ones that come from a marketing and design background. The ones that come from the marketing and business background, they see the world in terms of spreadsheets, right? And they would love nothing more than to just, and they've told me this, just use Excel. Their whole job to be Excel. And they used to hire people to do any of the kind of creative tasks, but they know what imagery to put in those ads to get the effect from their spreadsheets. So that's what they mean by focus on high-level strategy. It's campaign strategy. It's not, image making or even branding or copywriting. And then the creative ideation, that's the part that this is really substituting. So it's like, show me 100 ideas of an Energizer bunny that appeals to the gay market, right? And then you get all those right away. Are they good ideas? No, but there are lots of them, and they're cheap, and they're immediate. So that's the last thing, endless iteration. It can instantly distribute to online audiences and focus test to see what approach is most effective and profitable, and that is where we are right now. That is the AI slop issue, because companies now at very low cost, even really, really big money-making companies, are basically spamming the general audience, hoping that they'll hear from them about what campaigns are effective and which ones aren't, which is a risky strategy, and we'll see why. But right now they are spending lots of money on it. Far more money is going into AI agents, into AI programs, into AI integration, in digital media and imaging than it is in anything else. And the workforce in the last 3 years has been cut about 70%, the human workforce. So what are the negatives? The negatives. So there is no regulation on AI generative marketing. And because of the last big budget bill that was passed by Congress, there will not be allowed to be any regulation on AI generative technology for the next 10 years. And there are some problems with that because it includes massive copyright and plagiarism concerns, which has potential for brand damaging biases. So do you know what the biggest market in new AI spending has been in the last 6 months? You're not going to guess. It is AI insurance. So it's to buy preemptive insurance for a branding catastrophe that might happen from AI marketing, right? Like you do a shoe campaign, but there are Nazi symbols in the back because the internet's terrible, right? And you don't catch it in time because you're not hiring any humans to quality check. And so you're doing one of these slop campaigns, and then people get really upset and sue you for having like anti-defamation and for having racist content in your national campaign. If you bought AI insurance, they will pay you out for that. They'll try to, make it so you don't lose a lot of money on your branding mistakes that are all done to the inherent randomness of AI generation. So I like how this is just a list. And these are all lists from AI themselves, right? So these are all well known and well documented. So potential for brand damaging biases and misinformation, lack of emotional depth and true creativity, issues with inconsistent or factually incorrect outputs, the challenge of achieving perfect consistency due to AI's inherent randomness, and potential consumer distrust of AI-generated content. Additionally, using AI-generated images for marketing can raise ethical concerns about authorship and the future of human artists. That's what question of the day 4 is about, right? And then what are the challenges to AI ever getting better? It is relying on flawed training data. the whole of the